Hi, good morning everyone and welcome. Real estate is the largest single component of wealth in our society. That is a quote from the first line of the book that I used to use at the University of Delaware by Archer and Lynn. And a statement has never been more appropriate than when we think about the role that real estate plays in economic development, in asset optimization, in inclusion and diversity, and most importantly, in creating shared value for everyone in communities. So that's the theme behind our symposium today. And what I want to do is just do a little setup before we bring our first panel up. And I also, want to start by thanking all of you for taking your valuable time to be with us this morning, and our panelists and special guest, and Dean Brown. You could not have summarized the essence of what we're trying to accomplish here any better. And Craig, having you here is a real treat because not only of your current role within the division of real estate, but also with your role as a former real estate and probably somewhat current practitioner of real estate, so you know both sides. And then also to our dear friend, Dr. Roger Kennedy and Alexi. It all came from a lunch that you two and Alex and I had a couple years ago, and we said, you know what, we could really do some interesting value-add stuff, playing off the fantastic reputation of the real estate program here at the university and the university's reputation overall. And so thank you all so much for that. And just by way of background, this is the 9th symposium of this nature that we put on around the country. We started in 2012 at the University of Delaware. Then we went to the Purdue Business School at Salisbury, Maryland, then to Delaware State University in Dover, Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton, then University of Illinois. Then we had the University of Washington in Seattle, another one at the University of Delaware, and then at Johns Hopkins, and now this one. So it's been very impactful and exciting to be able to value to the community. And again, for the students that are here, it's always lightens and creates such a great feeling in the room to have your young energy and enthusiasm here with us as well. So thank you. And then most importantly, thank you to our sponsors, Illinois American Water, Dave Farrar, who's the regional manager here in Champaign, and we have Central Illinois Bank with Michael Beam, and Farnsworth Group, Matt Williams is here, and Ramshaw, Jerry Ramshaw from Ramshaw Real Estate, and we have Linda Green and Matt Salen from the Champaign County Association of Realtors, and also Jean Madej from the National Association of Realtors Commercial Group. So we have a great group, and also this is the, I guess, maybe about our 5th symposium where we've co-innovated this with SAP. Tom Anderson is here, and he'll be one of our panelists later. So we have a super content-rich few hours for you today. And so hold on, and we'll get started. And one of the nicest things so far is, hopefully I won't mess it up, is we're actually on schedule, which out of the previous 8 ones, we never were, because we wound up with too many welcomers or too many panelists, but it looks like we're kind of in an ideal mode right now. So, again, welcome. Okay. Really, it's an overview of what we're going to try and cover today, and it's pretty aggressive, but we thought if we're going to bring everybody together, we might as well pack the agenda with lots of great stuff. The real net effect of this is, how can communities drive new economic development and job creation through placemaking strategies? And if you think about it, most communities around the country have still not recovered from the recession that occurred in 2008. If you happen to be Seattle or Austin, Texas, or many of those areas, and again, we did a symposium in March of last year in Seattle. Seattle has a major homelessness problem right now because people can't even afford over to work and live in the same city. So and that happens in many other areas. So we also are seeing a change in corporate America, and we're seeing a change in demography, where people are no longer looking to have one job and go with a company, whether they would have that choice or not, and be able to stay somewhere for 20 or 30 years and then retire. Now we're kind of all in survival mode, because we don't know if we're working for E&Y or for Capital One or for JP Morgan or for Johnson & Johnson or for DuPont. Or if you just think about all those companies, you can have a great career there, but you never know what's around the corner. So like the Dean keyed on, really the key to our personal futures and our personal runways really lies in the theme of the college and the university, which is innovation and entrepreneurship. We all have to become social entrepreneurs, which means we have to figure out how to survive and how to create value within our own worlds. But we also have to figure out how do we create a living so that we can eat, because that's just not that easy anymore. And I know from having taught for almost 30 years in different universities, I've seen this incredible progression with my students over the years, where until the 2005, 2006, 90% of my students had jobs before they finished my class as undergraduates, and now 20% have. In grad school, I teach at the Cary Business School. A lot of our graduates are coming out with Master of Science in Real Estate and Infrastructure from Johns Hopkins University, and there's no guarantee that they're going to be able to get a job because of that. That's a real different paradigm. So it really kind of, it forces us to start to study the market and to be market researchers on how do we create our own personal runway, as well as how do we create value for others at the same time. So how many of you heard of the term creative class? Raise your hand. Okay, so maybe about half or a third. The creative class is a phrase coined by Dr. Richard Florida, and if you have not read any of his books, he is one of the recognized authorities on understanding market dynamics on creative economy. And he wrote one book called The Rise of the Creative Class. Then he wrote a second book called The Rise of the Creative Class Revisited. And then he just came out with another book about the problems with urban cities and how we are still failing in being able to create that inclusive value and share prosperity within our inner cities. And if we all look around the country, we don't need very many more examples of what's happened around the country. Here, proximate to you, is Ferguson. In Baltimore, with Johns Hopkins, you have one of the largest research institutions in the country in a city whose brand is trying to recover. And my personal home, which is Wilmington, Delaware, I grew up there, but Parenting Magazine named Wilmington, Delaware, Murder Town, USA. And there's only 75,000 people that live in the city of Wilmington, but they can't figure out how to make it a great place. So what we try to do is try to figure out how we use real estate as a currency for economic development, as Alex mentioned earlier. And what we're going to talk about today are micro and macro levels of placemaking. And how do we, and one of the other keys for those of you that are in the real estate area, I grew up on the appraisal side and the valuation side. That's where I spent the lion's share of my career. And what has struck me more than anything over the last 10 years is that almost every community in the country and every little borough and municipality has underproductive real estate assets that are sitting there fallow with no highest and best use and no real future direction. And each one of those examples is an opportunity to create value, economic development, and jobs. So we'll talk about that. City Labs is something I'll touch on in my comments in the second panel, which is reimagining undervalued urban neighborhoods with existing residents in place. Again, most cities have multiple neighborhoods that could use that type of IP for future prosperity. And then social entrepreneurship, and again we have our symposium. So the first panel is going to focus on placemaking, and the second panel is going to focus on real estate innovation and measuring asset optimization from real estate. So just one kind of comment as we get started, and if you read the intro to our whole theme, the number one decision in people's lives today is where they choose to live. Okay, and so that's been true for the last 5+ years. It's not job, it's place. And so the key to a place like Champaign-Urbana and Central Illinois and Peoria and East St. Louis and all the Chicago and all the other areas around the state is we have to be able to tell our story better. We have to be able to say why here, why this place. And it's not rocket science to be able to do that. It's marketing. It's being able, and I think the dean mentioned this as well, it's being able to tell our story, and the mayor too. How do we tell our story in a way that compels people to make this area and this region their choice and their preference? And so that's really the thesis and the goal behind the symposium is to bring all this together. We're a community, and for all of us in the community to try and figure out what can we bring to the table that will help to create economic development and jobs, and how can we also do something that's synergistic with our talents and our goals and our objectives as well. So we'll talk a little bit more, and again, if you just go to a granular level of repositioning real estate in your community or your town and city, and think about it. Closed plant sites, empty retailer malls, struggling mixed-use development. If we look around Champaign-Urbana, look at the Lincoln Square, and just what I've been visiting with Alex for years, and keep saying to him, hey Alex, is anything happening there? Is anything going on? Former corporate headquarters. We just had a cataclysmic announcement in Peoria about Caterpillar. That's just gut-wrenching to hear something like that if your community is circled around Caterpillar. What do we have to do? We can't hold our heads down and say, oh, woe is me, there's nothing we can do about it. What we have to do is we have to use innovation and entrepreneurship to figure out the way forward from doing something like that. Schools, post office, libraries, Rantoul Air Base. There's another underutilized asset that a lot of effort is going into trying to reimagine it in the future, but that should be and could be a nexus of economic development too. But also, like Craig said in his comments, this doesn't take 2 to 3 years to take something like that and turn it into a place of innovation. It takes decades sometimes. And when you're in the community, and we're all working really hard to try and create this change, there's a lot of naysayers out there that say, oh, that'll never work, well, that'll never happen, or it's never going to be a great place. Well, if we all took that attitude, then we'd never have a reason to get up in the morning and keep trying to do what we do. But it does take time, and it does take perspective, and it takes education and teaching each other. So I think what type of catalyst projects are out there? Think about public assets. How many great public assets are there out in the community, in the region, and in the state that could be reimagined as places of economic development? And for those of you in the real estate business, one of my favorite stories came out of a project that I worked on in Albuquerque, New Mexico. How many of you have ever heard of Eggland's Best, the eggs? They're made by a company called Cal-Maine Foods. Cal-Maine Foods is based in Jackson, Mississippi. They're the largest producers of fresh eggs in the country. I think 300 million dozen eggs, and they're a client. They had an old egg hatching facility. How many of you have seen or watched the series Breaking Bad? Well, some of the Breaking Bad episodes were filmed at the Cal-Maine hatching facility in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Well, it was on the market for 5 years. It's literally one half of a mile from the Isleta Hard Rock Casino on I-25 in Albuquerque. And the marketing strategy was former egg hatching facility. That was their marketing strategy. And so we said, okay, that might be the reason why the property hasn't moved. You might want to be a little more creative than that and maybe tell a story about the property. So we wound up reimagining it and rebranding it as the South Mountain Agro-Tech Park. And it wound up selling, and we wound up being able to market it. But the whole idea is strategic marketing plans are within all of our capacity to be able to do. And then, like we have here, the perfect foundation here at the University of Illinois is that we can tell a market story of innovation that's driving new economic development. And with the university and with your fantastic research part that Laura has done such a great job with, you have the story, but we have to never give up. And like Greg Popovich says for the San Antonio Spurs, we have to keep pounding the rock and pounding the rock until we chip away at these different successes. And then at that point, we can still continue to pound the rock, but we'll be able to enjoy the ride a little bit. So again, welcome. I look forward to a really fun session with all of you, and we're going to start with panel 1, please.